The Agri-weather outlook is sponsored by Excalia fungicide from Valent USA.
How will the weather fare as the region prepares to enter February? Here's John with our Agri-weather outlook.
Very cold weather is about to dump back into the northern plains region as we end the month of January and start off the month of February. And it looks like for the northern parts of the central United States, this is a cold weather pattern that will have some serious lingering aspects. It's going to be cold for a couple of weeks, it looks like. Meanwhile, way down south, it's not expected to get that cold. There will be some probably at least one round of freezing or frozen precipitation down in the mid-south, but it's not going to get really frosty all the way down to the Gulf in this pattern. And this is a fairly typical second half of the winter weather pattern setting up, and it really sets up for some heavy rain and some stormy weather in the old mid-south, places like Memphis and Atlanta, Birmingham, sometimes up toward Louisville. That kind of the mid-south section of the country tends to get pretty wet this time of year. Some of it rains, sometimes it's rain and snow, and it's because of the cold air coming out of the north, but the warm air beginning to work northward with early spring in the south. So here's the way that happens. First of all, obviously the colder weather has arrived back into the northern plains. Frigid, meaning high temperatures near and below zero. It's going to be like that all week here in the north. Most of the Middle West will be seasonably cold, but we're not seeing really cold weather penetrate in the deep south, and we're starting to see surges of temperatures in the 70s and even some days maybe approaching 80 coming up into the deep south. That sets up this very much rainy weather pattern, which I'll show you in just a minute. But with the cold weather in the north, the active pattern is not going to be anything but cold, right? So we're not going to see much snow into the Dakotas and Minnesota, just a lot of greatly cold air. As we get into the second full week of February, it's still going to be extremely cold. There'll be a couple of days in North Dakota that go above zero, but it's going to stay basically fairly cold. We'll continue to see the warm weather at times surging up down south. Next couple of weeks looks like a great time to visit Florida, but it's just going to stay cold across the north. Southwest to northeast jet stream right in here is where you look for the heaviest precipitation. Let's take a look at the 2 weeks. The first week, the transition into February, there will be enough cold weather at first, I think, to bring some snow down into Texas and Oklahoma, and maybe some freezing rain in the southern part of the mid-south. However, as this storm passes through, it will likely warm up, so some of this will turn back into rain. Any snow in the northern plains and upper Midwest would likely be light and not contain very much moisture. Second week, we're going to see a lot of dry weather, except again, the southeastern part of the United States will continue to be quite wet, and the northern part of that will bring some wet snows to part of the lower Corn Belt. But the Great Lakes area, unless there's some lake effect snows, and the northern plains is looking mostly dry and steady cold.